A boy stands in a stone courtyard, in the heart of the greatest city in the Americas. He is maybe 14 years old. He is not a criminal. He hasn't stolen anything, hurt anyone, or broken a single law that you or I would even recognize. His crime is that, in a moment that mattered, he flinched. He showed fear. And for a child of his rank in this city, that can carry a sentence of death. Now, your very first instinct is that these people were monsters, that this is just cruelty with a calendar attached. Stay with me for the next 10 minutes because that instinct is wrong and the truth underneath it is so much stranger. This was not punishment. This was a school. Possibly the most demanding school any human society has ever built. And here is the part that should bend your brain a little. In this system, the higher you were born, the more the law could kill you. Not less. More. By the end of this, I want you to answer one question honestly. In the comments, if you're brave enough. Not whether they were right. Whether you would have survived them. Everything you are about to hear was, to the Aztecs, not abuse. It was manufacture. They were not trying to destroy their children, they were trying to build a very specific kind of human being, one the language of the time described with a chilling phrase. A person with a stone heart and a stone face, unmovable, unafraid, impossible to break. And they had a curriculum for it. We know the curriculum because it was written down. There is a document called the Codex Mendoza, painted by Aztec hands around the year 1541, just after the Spanish conquest, and part of it is essentially an instruction manual for raising a child. The pages count the years in little dots. Age 3, age 4, age 5. All the way up, and beside each age they drew the discipline that matched it. For the youngest, almost nothing. A 3-year-old is barely corrected. A little older, and the parents simply show the child a maguey spine, the long, needle-sharp thorn of the agave plant, and leave it lying there in view. That's the entire punishment, a threat sitting on the floor between a father and his son. Then the dots climb, and so does the pain. By around 8 or 9, the threat becomes real. The codex shows a girl having her wrist pricked with that thorn. It shows a boy pierced in the neck, the back, and the hip, his wrists and ankles bound so he cannot pull away. By 10 to 14, the punishments turn colder, almost clinical. A child forced to breathe the acrid smoke of roasting chili peppers until the lungs burn. A child left to sleep bound on wet ground through the whole freezing night. In every single one of these images, the children are drawn weeping. Now notice what that actually is. It is not a parent losing their temper. It is a schedule. The pain is calibrated to the age, escalating on a fixed timeline, like a syllabus. That is your first real clue that we are not looking at cruelty here. We are looking at a system. But here is where your assumptions start to crack. Around the age of 12 to 15, every child left home for school. And there were 2 schools. The commoners' children went to a place called the Telpoch Cali, the House of Youth. Hard labor, military training, cold floors, not exactly a childhood of joy. But the children of the nobility went somewhere else entirely. Its name translates, depending on who you ask, as the House of Penance, or, more bluntly, the House of Tears. And the House of Tears was worse. Much, much worse. Read that again in your head because it runs against everything you expect. In your world, the rich kid gets the softer landing. The elite school means smaller classes and better food. In the Aztec world, the elite school meant you were handed to the priesthood as young as 5. Dragged out of bed in the freezing dark to pierce your own body and draw your own blood. With those very same maguey spines, held to a standard of self-denial that a farmer's son never had to meet. The commoners, relatively speaking, had it easy. And it did not stop at the schoolhouse door. This is where the whole thing turns completely inside out. Take something simple, getting drunk. In Aztec law, public drunkenness was serious, but the consequences depended entirely on your rank in the exact opposite direction to what you would guess. A commoner caught drunk for the first time had his head publicly shaved while the crowd jeered at him. Humiliating, but survivable. A nobleman caught doing the identical thing could be strangled to death. First offense, the higher your blood, the shorter your rope. The one mercy in the whole system, by the way, went to the very old. Once you passed 70, you were allowed to drink as much as you liked. You had earned it. And we even have the reasoning recorded. Nobles were expected to be the standard that everyone else measured themselves against. For a noble to fail was not a private slip. It was treason against the entire idea of order. Which brings us straight back to that boy in the courtyard. Because for children of the nobility, the sources tell us the capital offenses were not only violence or theft. A high-born child could face death for being disrespectful, for being wasteful, and yes, for being a coward. Sit with how strange that is. In almost every society humans have ever built, privilege is a shield. It buys you second chances, the benefit of the doubt, a softer version of the rules. The Aztecs took that shield and turned it into a bill. To be born high was not to be protected from the law. It was to be the most exposed to it. Your rank did not excuse you. Your rank invoiced you. So now the real question. Not what they did. We've seen what they did. Why? Why would a civilization do this to its own most precious children? Here is the answer most people jump to, and I want to kill it right now, because it is wrong. People assume this was about breeding, culling the weak, weeding out bad stock, some ancient theory of strong blood being preserved and weak blood erased. It was not. The Aztecs had no concept of genetics, no notion of heredity in the way we mean it. A cowardly noble child was not seen as defective raw material to be thrown away. He was seen as something far more frightening, a failure of duty at the exact point where duty mattered the most. And that is because of what these people believed was holding up the sky. To the Aztecs, the universe was not stable. It was a fragile, borrowed thing that had already collapsed and been remade several times over, and it was kept running only through constant human discipline, effort, and sacrifice. The sun itself, they believed, had to be fed and fought for every single day. In a world like that, strength is not a virtue. Strength is maintenance. A soft, fearful, self-indulgent elite was not merely embarrassing. It was a structural crack in the thing keeping the darkness out. Cowardice in a child who was meant to grow into a leader was not a phase he would grow out of. It was rot, spreading through a load-bearing wall. That is why the stone heart and the stone face were never cruelty to them. They were survival. They genuinely believed that a person who could not master his own fear could not be trusted to help hold up the world. One honest note here, because it matters, and because the truth is worth more than a cheap thrill. Almost everything we know about this comes to us filtered through documents written after the Spanish conquest. The Codex Mendoza, and the vast work of a friar named Bernardino de Sahagún, who spent years interviewing surviving Aztec elders about a world that was already being burned down around them. So the most extreme claims deserve a raised eyebrow. Some of it may be exaggerated. But the shape of the thing, the calibrated discipline, the house of tears, the inverted law that struck the nobility the hardest, shows up again and again in the paintings and in the testimony. It is far too consistent to be pure invention. Which means the boy in the courtyard was not the system breaking down. He was the system working exactly as it was designed to work. His death was not an accident of a savage age. It was the logical endpoint of a civilization that had decided its very survival depended on manufacturing human beings without weakness, and that the ones born highest owed that strength the most, on pain of death. The most disturbing thing about all of this was never the violence. Plenty of empires were violent. The most disturbing thing is how completely it made sense on its own terms. It was coherent. It was consistent. It was a machine, and every gear turned. And before you file this away as ancient barbarism and feel comfortable again, look closely at the rule it broke. Your world runs on the opposite law. In your world, the more power a person holds, the softer the consequences become. The powerful fail, and then they fail upward. We have all watched it happen, and we have all quietly accepted it as simply how things are. The Aztecs looked at that exact same problem, and they built the perfect inverse. Give a person more and demand more until the demand could cost them everything they had. It is brutal. It may even be monstrous, but it was one of the most honest answers any society has ever dared to give to a question we still cannot answer for ourselves. What exactly do we have the right to require from the people we place in charge? That boy in the stone courtyard has been dead for 500 years. The city is gone. The gods are gone. The language of the stone heart survives now mostly in a handful of painted books behind museum glass. But the question he died for is still sitting right here, unanswered, in every courtroom and every boardroom you have ever heard of. So, I will leave you with the one I promised you at the very beginning. Not whether they were right, whether you would have survived them. If this is the kind of question that keeps you up at night, the kind where the past quietly turns around and looks back at you, then stay a while. There are a lot more of them here.